A waitress took in two starving frozen boys. Next day, a CEO appeared and boldly declared her his wife before everyone watching. Where are you from? Comment below and subscribe. Now, let's enjoy this incredible story together. The snow had been falling for 3 hours straight, turning Main Street into a white wasteland. Emma Clark pressed her forehead against the cold window of Rosie's diner, watching the blizzard swallow everything in its path. At 26, she'd seen plenty of Colorado winters, but this one felt different, meaner, the kind that made people disappear. She was about to turn away when she saw them. Two small figures stumbling through the snowdrifts, their thin jackets doing nothing against the brutal wind. Children. Her heart lurched. Emma didn't think. She burst through the diner's door, the cold hitting her like a slap. "Hey, over here!" She waved frantically, and the smaller boy spotted her first. His face was blue with cold, his lips trembling so hard he couldn't speak. She grabbed them both and pulled them inside. The warmth of the diner made them gasp. Emma wrapped them in every spare apron and towel she could find, her hands shaking as she turned up the heat. The older boy couldn't have been more than 7, his little brother maybe 5. Both were soaked through, their teeth chattering violently. "Where are your parents?" Emma asked gently, kneeling to their level. The older boy just shook his head, his dark eyes enormous in his pale face. She didn't push. First things first, she needed to get them warm and fed. 20 minutes later, both boys were wrapped in blankets from Emma's car, sitting in the corner booth with steaming hot chocolate and grilled cheese sandwiches in front of them. The younger one had finally stopped shivering enough to eat, shoving the food into his mouth like he hadn't eaten in days. Emma's stomach twisted. Maybe he hadn't. "I'm Emma," she said softly, sliding into the booth across from them. "What are your names?" The older boy looked up at her with those serious dark eyes. "I'm Jake. This is Tommy. Thank you for helping us." His voice was so formal, so controlled for a child. It broke her heart. "Where do you live, sweetheart?" Emma kept her voice gentle, non-threatening. Jake's jaw tightened. He looked away, out the window at the storm that showed no signs of stopping. "We don't have anywhere," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not anymore." Emma's professional smile faded. She looked at these two small boys, alone in a snowstorm, and felt something crack open in her chest. She'd been alone too once. She knew how it felt to be cold and hungry with nowhere to go. "Well, you do now," she said firmly. She had no idea what was about to happen. "Tonight you're staying with me." The diner was empty, except for them. No one was crazy enough to venture out in this weather. Emma called her boss, who told her to close up early and stay safe. She gathered the boys, made sure they were bundled up properly, and led them to her beat-up Honda in the parking lot. Her apartment was small, barely more than a studio, but it was warm and dry and safe. The boys stood in the doorway, uncertain, until Emma smiled and ushered them inside. She gave them her bed, made them more hot food, and sat with them until they fell asleep, their small bodies finally relaxed after hours of tension. Emma stayed awake most of the night, watching them sleep and wondering what she'd gotten herself into. She should call Child Protective Services in the morning. These boys needed help she couldn't provide. But every time she thought about making that call, something stopped her. They looked so peaceful now, so safe. She couldn't bear to wake them to more uncertainty. She had no idea this moment would change everything. The next morning dawned clear and brutally cold. The storm had passed, leaving behind 3 feet of snow and a crystalline blue sky. Emma made pancakes while the boys slept, her small kitchen filling with the smell of butter and maple syrup. She was flipping the last pancake when a sharp knock on her door made her jump. She wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, she saw a man in an expensive dark coat, his breath fogging in the cold hallway air. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a face that could have been carved from granite. Even through the distorted view, she could tell he was furious. Emma opened the door a crack, keeping the chain lock engaged. "Can I help you?" The man's eyes were the same dark brown as Jake's, the same shape, the same intensity. I'm looking for 2 boys. I was told they might be here. Emma's heart started pounding. Who told you that? The owner of the diner where you work. She said her employee took in 2 children last night during the storm. His voice was clipped, controlled, but Emma could hear the edge of panic underneath. Are they here? Are they safe? Before Emma could answer, a small voice came from behind her. Dad? Emma turned to see Jake standing in the middle of her tiny living room, Tommy peeking out from behind him. The older boy's face was a mixture of relief and apprehension. The man at the door made a sound that might have been a sob. Jake. He said it like a prayer. Thank God. Let me in, please. Emma's mind was racing. This was their father? Where had he been? Why were these boys alone in a snowstorm? But Jake was moving toward the door and Emma found herself unlocking the chain and stepping back. The man strode in and immediately dropped to his knees, pulling both boys into his arms. He was shaking, Emma realized. This powerful, expensive-looking man was trembling as he held his sons. Tommy started crying, burying his face in his father's shoulder. Jake just held on tight, his small hands fisting in his father's coat. I'm sorry, the man was saying, his voice rough. I'm so sorry. I looked everywhere. I thought. He broke off, pressing his face into Jake's hair. Emma stood frozen by her small kitchen, spatula still in hand, watching this reunion and feeling completely out of her depth. Finally, the man looked up at her, and she got her first real look at his face. He was probably in his mid-30s, with sharp features and eyes that had seen too much. Handsome in a harsh way that made her breath catch. You saved them, he said simply. How can I ever thank you? Emma shrugged, suddenly self-conscious in her old pajama pants and faded college sweatshirt. Anyone would have done the same. No. He stood, keeping one hand on Jake's shoulder. Not anyone. Most people would have called the authorities and washed their hands of it. You took them into your home, you kept them safe. He paused, his jaw working. I owe you everything. You don't owe me anything, Emma said quietly. I'm just glad they're okay. But I have to ask, where were you? Why were they alone in that storm? The man's face hardened. It's complicated. There was a misunderstanding with my staff. I was in meetings in Denver. My phone died. And by the time I realized something was wrong, he stopped, his hands clenching into fists. It doesn't matter. It won't happen again. Emma wanted to ask more questions, but Tommy was tugging on his father's sleeve. Dad, Emma made pancakes. The tension broke slightly. Yep. The man looked at the stack of pancakes on Emma's tiny kitchen counter, then back at her. May we stay? I'd like to hear how you found them. And because Emma had never been good at saying no to people who needed help, she nodded. Of course, there's plenty. They crowded around her small table, the boys digging into the pancakes while Emma and their father sat across from each other, the air between them charged with something she couldn't name. He introduced himself as Alexander Hunt, CEO of Hunt Industries. The name meant nothing to Emma, but she could tell it should have. As she told him about finding the boys in the storm, his expression grew darker and darker. They were walking on Main Street, in that weather, alone. His voice was deadly quiet. How long had they been out there? I don't know, Emma admitted. Long enough to be half frozen. They warmed up okay, though, and they ate well. Alexander's eyes moved to his sons, who were happily working on their third pancakes each. Something in his face softened. You probably saved their lives. Emma felt her cheeks heat. I just did what anyone. Stop saying that. Alexander's eyes snapped back to her, intense and focused. Stop diminishing what you did. You saw 2 children in danger and you helped them, no questions asked. You brought them into your home, fed them, kept them safe. That's not nothing. Emma didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded and focused on her coffee. The boys finished eating and started exploring her tiny apartment with the curiosity of children everywhere. Tommy found her collection of paperback romances and started building a tower with them. Jake gravitated to her bookshelf, his finger tracing the spines of her nursing textbooks. You're a student? Alexander asked, following her gaze. Part-time. I work at the diner to pay for classes. Emma felt defensive suddenly, aware of how small her life must look to this man in his $1,000 coat. It's slow going, but I'll get there eventually. Nursing? Yeah, I want to help people. She said it simply, without apology. Alexander studied her with those intense dark eyes. You already do. Before Emma could respond, her phone buzzed. Her boss checking that she was okay after the storm. Emma stepped into her tiny bathroom to take the call, leaving Alexander alone with his sons. When she came back out 5 minutes later, all three of them were building a tower out of her books, Tommy giggling every time it fell down. The sight made something warm bloom in Emma's chest. This moment, this unexpected morning with these three strangers in her tiny apartment, felt significant somehow, like a door opening to something new. She had no idea how right she was. When the book tower finally collapsed for the 10th time, sending paperbacks scattering across her floor, Tommy dissolved into giggles. Alexander looked up at Emma with the first real smile she'd seen from him. It transformed his face, made him look years younger. We should go, he said, standing and brushing off his expensive slacks. You've done more than enough, and I'm sure you have things to do. Emma did have things to do, laundry, homework, grocery shopping, but she found herself reluctant to see them leave. The boys had brought life to her quiet apartment, and Alexander. Well, she wasn't ready to examine what she felt about Alexander. Will they be okay? She asked as he helped the boys back into their jackets. I mean, with whoever was supposed to be watching them. Alexander's face went hard again. That person no longer works for me. I've already made other arrangements. There was something cold in his voice that made Emma shiver. This was a man used to getting his way, used to solving problems with money and power. It should have put her off. Instead, she found it oddly attractive. The boys hugged her goodbye, Tommy hanging on tight enough to squeeze the air from her lungs. Thank you, Emma, Jake said seriously. You're really nice. You're welcome, sweetheart. Stay safe, okay? Alexander was the last to leave. He paused in the doorway, one hand on the frame, looking back at her. I meant what I said. I owe you everything. If you ever need anything, anything at all, you call me. He pressed a business card into her hand. I mean it. Emma looked down at the card. Alexander Hunt, CEO, Hunt Industries, a phone number printed in elegant script. I don't need anything, but thank you. Nevertheless. His eyes held hers for a long moment. I always pay my debts, Miss Clark. Always. And then they were gone, leaving Emma standing in her doorway with a business card in her hand and the distinct feeling that her life had just changed in ways she couldn't yet understand. She closed the door slowly, turned to look at her messy apartment, books scattered everywhere, blankets still piled on the couch from last night, 3 plates sticky with syrup on her table, and smiled. What happened next would shock everyone, but in that moment Emma just felt happy. She'd helped someone. That was enough, or so she thought. The diner was packed the next day, everyone wanting to talk about the storm. Emma served coffee and pancakes and listened to a dozen different versions of how terrible it had been. How much snow fell, who lost power, whose car got stuck. She smiled and nodded and didn't mention the 2 boys she'd saved or their intense wealthy father. She was wiping down the counter when the door chimed. Emma looked up, ready with her waitress smile, and froze. Alexander Hunt stood in the doorway of Rosie's diner in his expensive suit, looking completely out of place among the vinyl booths and laminated menus. Every head in the diner turned to stare. He walked straight to Emma, his eyes locked on hers with an intensity that made her pulse race. The diner fell silent. Emma could feel everyone watching, waiting. Alexander stopped in front of her, reached across the counter, and took her hand. His palm was warm, his grip firm. Emma Clark, he said, his voice carrying through the silent diner. You saved my sons. You took them into your home when they had nowhere else to go. You kept them warm and fed and safe. He paused, his dark eyes never leaving hers. There's only one way I can properly thank you for that. Emma's heart was pounding so hard she thought everyone must be able to hear it. "You really don't have to marry me," Alexander said. The diner erupted. Someone dropped a coffee cup. Her boss gasped. Emma just stared at him, certain she'd misheard. "What?" "Marry me," Alexander repeated, completely serious. "Be my wife. Let me take care of you the way you took care of my sons." Emma yanked her hand back. "Are you insane? I don't even know you." "Then get to know me." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to something intimate despite their very public audience. "I'm a good father, I'm loyal. I'm wealthy enough that you'd never have to worry about money again. You could finish your nursing degree, you could do anything you wanted." His eyes searched hers. "All I'm asking is that you give me a chance to repay the debt I owe you." Emma's mind was spinning. This couldn't be happening. Men didn't just walk into diners and propose to waitresses they barely knew, especially not CEOs in $1,000 suits. "This is crazy," she whispered. "Yes," Alexander agreed. "But sometimes the craziest things make the most sense." He straightened, pulling another card from his pocket, this one with a handwritten address. "I'm having a dinner party tomorrow night. Come, meet my family, see where the boys live, and then decide." He placed the card on the counter between them, and before Emma could protest again, he turned and walked out. The door chimed behind him. The diner stayed silent for exactly 3 seconds, and then everyone started talking at once. Emma just stood there, staring at the card with his address on it, and wondered what on earth she was supposed to do now. This was only the beginning, though she didn't know it yet. She had no idea that saying yes to that dinner party would change everything. That accepting Alexander Hunt's impossible proposal would lead her into a world she'd never imagined, filled with wealth and power and secrets that ran deeper than she could have dreamed. All Emma knew in that moment was that her hands were shaking, and her heart was racing, and somehow impossibly she was actually considering it, considering saying yes to a man who'd just claimed her as his wife in front of half the town. And before we continue, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Leave your city in the comments below, and if you're enjoying this story, please like and subscribe for more. Now let's see what happens next. Emma spent the rest of her shift in a daze, mechanically refilling coffee cups and taking orders while her mind spun in circles. Everyone wanted to know about Alexander Hunt. Was she really going to marry him? Did she even know him? Was he really that rich? Emma deflected every question, but the truth was she was asking herself the same things. By the time her shift ended at 6, she'd made a decision. She was going to that dinner party, not because she was seriously considering his insane proposal, but because she wanted to see the boys again, to make sure they were really okay. That was all. Nothing to do with Alexander's intense dark eyes or the way her heart had raced when he'd taken her hand. Emma drove home through streets still lined with melting snow, parked her beat-up Honda in her tiny spot, and climbed the stairs to her apartment. She was fumbling with her keys when a voice behind her made her jump. "Miss Clark." Emma spun around. A woman in her 60s stood in the hallway, elegant in a wool coat, her silver hair perfectly styled. She had Alexander's eyes, his cheekbones. The family resemblance was unmistakable. "I'm Catherine Hunt," the woman said, offering her hand. "Alexander's mother. May we talk?" Emma's heart sank. She'd seen enough movies to know where this was going. The wealthy family member showing up to pay off the unsuitable girl, to warn her away from their precious son. She unlocked her door slowly. "I suppose you'd better come in." Catherine Hunt stepped into Emma's tiny apartment with the same grace she'd probably bring to a palace. She didn't look around in disdain, didn't wrinkle her nose at the small space or shabby furniture. She just sat down on Emma's second-hand couch and folded her hands in her lap. "You saved my grandsons," Catherine said without preamble. "Alexander told me everything, how you found them in the storm, how you brought them home, fed them, kept them safe." Her voice wavered slightly. "I came to thank you." Emma blinked. That wasn't what she'd expected. "Oh, you're welcome. I was just—" "Don't say anyone would have done the same," Catherine interrupted with a small smile. My son said you'd say that. He was right. She paused, studying Emma with those sharp eyes. He also told me he asked you to marry him. There it was. Emma sat down in her armchair, suddenly exhausted. He did, in front of half the town. That sounds like Alexander. Catherine's smile was fond. When he decides something, he goes all in, no half measures. She leaned forward. But I imagine you're confused, frightened perhaps. A strange man proposing marriage out of nowhere. It seems insane. It is insane, Emma said flatly. Yes, Catherine agreed. But let me tell you something about my son. When Jake and Tommy's mother died 3 years ago, Alexander was devastated. She was his college sweetheart, the love of his life. He threw himself into work, into being a father, into anything that would keep him from feeling that loss. She paused. He hasn't looked at another woman since. Not once. Until you. Emma's throat tightened. He doesn't know me. He knows enough. Catherine's gaze was steady. He knows you risked yourself to save his children. He knows you're studying nursing while working full-time. He knows you're kind and brave and selfless. For Alexander, that's everything. Emma shook her head. Marriage is more than gratitude. More than owing someone. You're right, which is why I'm here. Catherine reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. This is an invitation to dinner tomorrow night. Not from Alexander, from me. Come meet the family, see the boys. Have a meal with no pressure, no proposals, no expectations. Just dinner. She set the envelope on Emma's coffee table. And then if you never want to see any of us again, we'll respect that. Emma stared at the envelope. Will Alexander be there? Of course. Catherine stood, smoothing her coat. But I'll make sure he behaves. No more dramatic declarations, just dinner. She moved toward the door, then paused. Emma, may I call you Emma? At Emma's nod, she continued. My grandsons haven't stopped talking about you. About how nice you are, how you made them pancakes, how safe they felt in your home. You made an impression. Whatever you decide about Alexander's ridiculous proposal, please don't let it stop you from staying in those boys' lives. They need someone like you. And then she was gone, leaving Emma alone with an invitation and more questions than ever. She picked up the envelope, turning it over in her hands. The paper was heavy, expensive, the kind of thing that came from a world completely different from hers. She should throw it away. Should forget about Alexander Hunt and his impossible proposal and his beautiful, grieving sons. She should go back to her quiet life of work and school and dreams of someday making a difference. But when Emma looked at that invitation, all she could see was Jake's serious face and Tommy's gap-toothed smile, and Alexander's dark eyes promising that he always paid his debts. She thought about Catherine's words, about Alexander not looking at another woman in 3 years, about him going all in when he decided something. Little did she know what that decision would cost her. Emma called in sick to work the next day and spent it in a panic. What did you wear to dinner at a CEO's house? Everything in her closet suddenly looked shabby, worn. Finally, she settled on her one decent dress, a simple navy blue she'd bought for her cousin's wedding 2 years ago, and hoped it would be enough. At exactly 7 o'clock, Emma pulled up to the address on the invitation and almost drove away again. The Hunt house wasn't a house, it was an estate. A massive stone mansion set back from the road with gardens that probably cost more to maintain than Emma made in a year. She sat in her car, gripping the steering wheel, and seriously considered running. Then the front door opened, and Tommy came racing out. Emma, you came! You came! He grabbed her hand the moment she got out of the car, pulling her toward the house with all the force his little body could muster. I told Dad you'd come. Jake didn't believe me, but I knew. Emma let herself be dragged inside, and all her anxiety vanished. Because the inside of the Hunt mansion didn't look like a museum or a showroom. It looked like a home. There were toys scattered across the marble floor, drawings taped to the expensive wallpaper. A dog, a massive golden retriever, came bounding up to sniff her enthusiastically. That's Buddy, Tommy explained. He's supposed to stay in the yard, but he never does. Tommy, let Emma breathe. Alexander appeared from a doorway and Emma's breath caught. He was in jeans and a sweater, casual in a way that should have made him less intimidating but somehow didn't. He looked younger, more approachable, still devastating. Thank you for coming. Your mother invited me, Emma said, unsure what else to say. She was very persuasive. She usually is. Alexander moved closer and Emma caught his scent, something woodsy and expensive that made her pulse race. But I'm glad you're here. Come on, dinner's almost ready. The dining room was less formal than Emma expected, the long table set for 6. Catherine was already there, along with an older man who had to be Alexander's father. Same build, same strong features. And Jake, who gave Emma a shy smile. Emma, this is my father, Richard Hunt, Alexander said. Dad, this is Emma Clark. Richard stood and shook her hand with a grip that was firm but not crushing. The woman who saved my grandsons. We owe you everything, young lady. You really don't, Emma started, but Catherine laughed. See, I told you she'd say that. Catherine patted the chair next to her. Sit, Emma. And please let us thank you properly. With an excellent meal and absolutely no talk of marriage proposals unless you bring it up first. Dinner was wonderful. The food was incredible, some kind of fancy chicken dish that melted in Emma's mouth. But more than that, the company was warm. Richard told terrible dad jokes that made Tommy giggle. Catherine asked about Emma's nursing studies with genuine interest. Jake showed her his drawings, elaborate superhero scenes that showed real talent. And Alexander watched it all with an expression Emma couldn't quite read. She caught him looking at her several times, his dark eyes intense and focused. Each time her heart did something complicated in her chest. This was dangerous, she thought. This whole family was dangerous. They were making her want things she couldn't have, showing her a life that didn't belong to someone like her. After dinner, Tommy grabbed her hand again. Can Emma see our room? Please, Dad. Please. Alexander looked at Emma, one eyebrow raised in question. Only if she wants to. I'd love to, Emma found herself saying, and she meant it. Tommy and Jake led her upstairs, Buddy the dog bounding along behind them, and Emma got her first look at their world. Their room was huge, filled with toys and books and bunk beds shaped like a castle. But what struck her most was how lived in it felt, how loved. Dad reads to us every night, Jake said, showing her the bookmark in their current book, some fantasy adventure about knights. Even when he's really tired from work. And we have pancakes every Saturday, Tommy added, but yours were better. Emma laughed. I'm sure your dad's pancakes are great. They're not, Alexander said from the doorway, making her jump. They're terrible, I always burn them. He moved into the room, and suddenly the space felt smaller. Boys, time for bed. Say goodnight to Emma. They hugged her, both of them holding on tight. Will you come back? Tommy asked, his eyes huge. Please? Emma's throat tightened. I'll try. That's good enough for me. Jake smiled, and Emma had to look away before she started crying. Alexander walked her downstairs while his mother took the boys through their bedtime routine. The house was quiet now, just the two of them in the massive foyer. Emma suddenly felt awkward, unsure what to say. Thank you for coming, Alexander said quietly. It meant a lot to them. To all of us. They're great kids, Emma managed. You're doing a good job with them. I'm trying. He ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture that made him look vulnerable. It's not easy being both parents. I know I fail them sometimes. I work too much, I'm too strict, I don't always know what they need. He looked at her, and Emma saw genuine pain in his eyes. But when I saw how they were with you, how comfortable and happy, I realized what they've been missing. Someone soft, someone kind, someone who makes them feel safe the way their mother did. Emma's heart was pounding. Alexander, I know what I said yesterday was crazy, he interrupted. I know proposing to a woman I barely know is insane. But Emma, I meant every word. I'm not asking you to love me. I'm not even asking you to stay forever. I'm just asking you to give us a chance. To let me take care of you the way you took care of my sons. To be part of this family, even if it's just for a little while. He took a step closer, and Emma could feel the heat of him. I'm asking you to marry me, for real, with a ring and a ceremony and everything that comes with it. Say yes. Emma should have said no, should have walked away from this impossible offer, this too-good-to-be-true situation. But she looked at Alexander's face, saw the desperate hope there, and thought about those two little boys upstairs who'd already lost so much. Thought about how happy they'd been at dinner, how safe they'd felt with her. What happened next shocked everyone, especially Emma herself. I'll think about it, she heard herself say. Give me a week. Alexander's eyes blazed. A week. I can work with that. He pulled out his phone. Give me your number. I'm going to call you every day, take you to dinner, show you what life could be like. And at the end of the week, I'm going to ask you again. And this time, you're going to say yes. His confidence should have been off-putting. Instead, Emma found it thrilling. Pretty sure of yourself? Not sure. Alexander looked at her with devastating honesty. Hopeful. There's a difference. He reached out and tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear, his fingers barely brushing her cheek. The touch sent electricity through her entire body. I don't know what this is between us, Emma, but I want to find out. Don't you? Emma did want to find out. That was the problem. She wanted it more than she'd wanted anything in a long time, so she gave him her number and drove home in a daze, wondering what on earth she'd just agreed to. She had no idea this was only the beginning. Alexander kept his promise. He called the next morning while Emma was getting ready for her shift. Good morning. His deep voice rumbled through the phone, sending shivers down her spine. What are you doing tonight? Emma clutched her phone, staring at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. Working until 9. Perfect. I'll pick you up at 9:15. Dress casual. He paused. Unless you're too tired, I can wait until your day off. He was giving her an out. Emma should have taken it, should have said she was exhausted, that she needed time to think. Instead, she heard herself say, 9:15 is fine. Good. She could hear the smile in his voice. See you then, Emma. He hung up before she could change her mind. Emma stared at her phone for a long moment, then finished getting ready in a daze. What was she doing? This was crazy. She was going on a date with a man who'd proposed to her in front of half the town. A man who had 2 children and more money than she could imagine. A man who was way, way out of her league. But when 9:15 came, and Alexander pulled up to the diner in a sleek black car, Emma found all her doubts melting away. He got out to open her door, his hand warm on her lower back as he helped her in. The interior smelled like leather and that woodsy cologne that made her head spin. Where are we going? Emma asked as he pulled smoothly into traffic. You'll see. Alexander glanced at her, his eyes warm. Trust me? Emma realized she did trust him. Despite barely knowing him, despite the insanity of this whole situation, she trusted Alexander Hunt. Okay. They drove for 20 minutes, leaving the town behind and heading into the mountains. Emma watched the landscape change outside her window, the streetlights giving way to darkness punctuated by stars. Finally, Alexander turned down a narrow road and pulled into a small clearing. We're here, he said, killing the engine. Emma looked around. They were on a hilltop overlooking the valley. The town spread out below them like a carpet of lights. The view was breathtaking. How did you find this place? I came here a lot after my wife died, Alexander said quietly. When the boys were asleep and I couldn't breathe, when everything felt like too much, I'd drive up here and just sit. It helped. He turned to look at her. You're the first person I've ever brought here. Emma's throat tightened. Alexander, I know it's fast, he interrupted. I know this whole thing is insane. But Emma, I need you to understand something. He shifted in his seat to face her fully. When I saw Jake and Tommy safe in your apartment that morning, when I realized you'd taken them in without question, something shifted. I looked at you standing there in your pajamas making pancakes for my sons, and I thought, this is what's been missing. Not just for them. For me, too. You don't know me, Emma whispered. Then tell me. Alexander reached out and took her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. "Tell me everything, I want to know it all." So Emma did. She told him about growing up in foster care, bouncing from home to home until she aged out at 18, about working 3 jobs to put herself through community college, about her dream of becoming a nurse, of helping people the way she'd wished someone had helped her. She told him about being lonely, about feeling invisible, about wondering if she'd ever have a family of her own. And Alexander listened, really listened. When she was done, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "You're the strongest person I've ever met." Emma laughed, but it came out shaky. "I'm not strong, I'm just surviving. That's what strength is." Alexander squeezed her hand. "Emma, I grew up with everything. Money, family, opportunities. I never had to fight for anything. And when Sarah died," his voice caught, "when I lost her, I thought I'd never feel anything again. I threw myself into work, into taking care of the boys, into just getting through each day. I was surviving too, barely." "What changed?" Emma asked softly. "You." He said it simply, like it was obvious. "You reminded me what it feels like to hope, to want something beyond just making it to tomorrow." He brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her palm that made her breath catch. "Marry me, Emma. Not because you owe me anything or because I'm rich or because you feel sorry for my kids. Marry me because you feel this too, this connection, this possibility." Emma's heart was racing. She looked at Alexander's face in the dim light, saw the vulnerability there, the genuine emotion. This wasn't some calculated business deal. This was real. "I feel it," she admitted, "but I'm scared." "Me too." Alexander's honesty was disarming. Terrified, actually. But I think the best things in life are scary. They're the ones worth fighting for. Emma thought about Jake and Tommy, about how safe she'd felt at the Hunt family dinner, about this man who'd driven her to his secret place and opened his heart. She thought about spending her whole life alone, always on the outside looking in. And she made a decision that would change everything. "Okay," she whispered. "Ask me again." Alexander's eyes widened. "Emma." "Ask me," she said more firmly this time. Alexander took both her hands in his gaze intense and focused. "Emma Clark, will you marry me? Will you be my wife? A mother to my sons? A partner in this crazy, beautiful life? Will you take a chance on us?" "Yes." The word came out strong, sure. "Yes, I'll marry you." Alexander's face transformed. He pulled her across the center console and kissed her, his hands cupping her face like she was something precious. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, then deeper as Emma melted into him. She'd been kissed before, but never like this. Never with so much promise, so much hope. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Alexander rested his forehead against hers. "I'm going to make you so happy," he promised. "I swear it." Emma believed him. In that moment, with stars overhead and the man who'd changed her life holding her close, she believed anything was possible. But this moment would change everything in ways she couldn't yet imagine. The next few days passed in a blur. Alexander insisted on making their engagement official immediately. He took Emma to a jewelry store in Denver where she tried on rings that cost more than her car. She picked the simplest one, a classic solitaire diamond that caught the light beautifully, and Alexander slipped it onto her finger with a kiss that made the sales clerk sigh. The news spread through town like wildfire. Emma's boss hugged her and cried. Her co-workers wanted to know everything. And Emma, who'd spent so much of her life invisible, suddenly found herself the center of attention. It should have been overwhelming, but with Alexander's steady presence beside her, it felt manageable. The boys were ecstatic. Tommy literally jumped up and down when Alexander told them Emma had said yes. Jake hugged her tight and whispered, "I'm glad you're going to be our mom." Emma had to excuse herself to cry in the bathroom for 10 minutes. But not everyone was happy. 3 days after the engagement, Emma got a call from an unknown number, a woman's voice, cold and clipped. "Miss Clark, this is Victoria Hunt, Alexander's sister-in-law. We need to talk. Emma's stomach dropped. About what? About you marrying my brother-in-law for his money. Meet me at the Riverside Cafe in 1 hour. Come alone. Victoria hung up before Emma could respond. Emma stared at her phone, her good mood evaporating. She should tell Alexander, should let him handle his family, but part of her wanted to face this woman alone to prove she could stand up for herself. So she drove to the cafe, her heart pounding, and found Victoria Hunt waiting in a corner booth. Sarah's sister. Emma saw the resemblance immediately, the same blonde hair, the same delicate features. But where Sarah had been warm in photos Emma had seen around the house, Victoria was ice cold. Sit, Victoria commanded, and Emma did. I'll be direct. You're using Alexander. You saw a vulnerable man with money and children who needed a mother and you swooped in. Emma's hands clenched under the table. That's not true. Isn't it? Victoria's smile was cruel. You're a waitress with no family, no prospects, struggling to afford nursing school, and suddenly a millionaire proposes, and all your problems are solved. Very convenient. I love him, Emma said, and realized as she said it that it was true. Somewhere between the snowstorm and the hilltop and the engagement ring, she'd fallen in love with Alexander Hunt. Victoria laughed. You've known him less than a week. Sometimes that's all it takes. Emma met Victoria's eyes steadily. I'm sorry you lost your sister. I can't imagine how painful that must be. But I'm not trying to replace Sarah. I'm just trying to build a life with Alexander and those boys. A life that makes all of us happy. Sarah was perfect for him, Victoria said, her voice shaking now. They were meant to be together. You're not good enough. You'll never be what he needs. Emma felt the words like a slap, but she refused to flinch. Maybe you're right. Maybe I'm not good enough, but Alexander thinks I am, and that's what matters. She stood, proud of how steady her voice was. I'm sorry you're hurting, but I'm not going anywhere. She walked out with her head high, but by the time she got to her car, she was shaking. Victoria's words had found their mark. What if she was right? What if Emma wasn't good enough for this world, this family? What if she was making a huge mistake? Her phone rang. Alexander. Emma almost didn't answer, but she couldn't ignore him. Hello? Where are you? He sounded worried. Catherine said Victoria called you. Of course his mother knew. Emma should have realized the family would close ranks. I'm fine. I just met with her. Damn it, Emma, you should have told me. Victoria had no right. He broke off. Where are you? I'm coming to get you. I'm at the Riverside Cafe parking lot. Stay there. I'll be there in 5 minutes. He hung up and Emma sat in her car, watching people walk by, living their normal lives. She felt like she was in a dream. A beautiful, terrifying dream that might turn into a nightmare at any moment. True to his word, Alexander pulled up exactly 5 minutes later. He got out of his car and came straight to hers, opening her door and crouching beside her. Are you okay? What did Victoria say? Emma looked at this man who'd upended her entire life and felt something crack open in her chest. She said I'm not good enough for you, that I'm using you, that I'll never be what Sarah was. Alexander's face went hard. Victoria is grieving. She's been angry since Sarah died, lashing out at everyone. But that doesn't give her the right to attack you. He took Emma's hands. Listen to me. You are more than good enough. You're everything. And you're not Sarah. You're Emma. That's who I want. That's who I chose. But what if she's right? Emma's voice broke. What if I can't do this? What if I fail you and those boys? You won't. Alexander pulled her out of the car and into his arms, holding her tight. You won't fail us, because you care too much. Because you're brave and strong and kind. Because you're you. He pulled back to look at her face. But Emma, if you're having doubts, if this is too much, tell me now. I won't be angry. I'll understand. Emma looked up at him, at this man who'd asked her to marry him after knowing her less than a week, who'd taken her to his secret place, who was offering her everything she'd ever wanted. And she knew, despite Victoria's words, despite her fears, that she was making the right choice. "I'm not having doubts," she said firmly. "I'm just scared. But I want this. I want you. I want those boys. I want this life we're building." She stood on her toes and kissed him. "I'm all in, Alexander, completely." Alexander's arms tightened around her. "Then we'll face everything else together, starting with Victoria." He grimaced. "I need to have a talk with her, a serious one." "Don't," Emma said. "She's grieving. Let her work through it." "You're too forgiving." "Maybe," Emma smiled. "But that's who I am. Take it or leave it." "I'll take it," Alexander said and kissed her again. "Every part of you, forever." They stood there in the parking lot holding each other, and Emma felt her fear start to fade. This was real. This was happening. And whatever came next, they'd face it together. She had no idea how much she'd need that promise in the days to come. Alexander wanted a short engagement. "Why wait?" he argued when Emma suggested they take more time. "We know what we want. Let's do this." So 2 weeks after their engagement, Emma found herself being swept into wedding planning. Catherine took charge with the efficiency of a general, booking a venue, hiring a caterer, arranging for flowers. Emma's head spun with decisions about colors and cakes and seating arrangements. It was overwhelming and exciting and terrifying all at once. But the best part was the boys. Jake and Tommy were involved in everything, from picking out their suits to tasting cake samples. Tommy voted for chocolate everything, while Jake gravely insisted they needed at least one vanilla option. Watching them argue good-naturedly about frosting flavors made Emma's heart overflow with love. She was moving into the Hunt mansion gradually, bringing over boxes of her meager belongings and finding spaces for them in Alexander's enormous house. It felt surreal, seeing her second-hand books on his expensive shelves, her cheap clothes hanging next to his designer suits. But Alexander never made her feel less than. He made space for her things, asked her opinion on everything, treated her like an equal partner. Emma had given notice at the diner, though her boss had been understanding. "You go live your fairy tale," she'd said with tears in her eyes. "You deserve it, honey." Emma had cried too, feeling guilty for leaving but excited for what came next. She was still taking her nursing classes, determined to finish her degree. Alexander supported this completely, even helping her study sometimes. 3 days before the wedding, Emma was alone in the house when the doorbell rang. She opened it to find Victoria Hunt standing on the porch, looking smaller somehow, more vulnerable. "Can we talk?" Victoria asked quietly. Emma should have said no, should have protected herself from more cruel words. But she saw the genuine pain in Victoria's eyes and stepped aside. "Come in." They sat in the living room, an awkward silence stretching between them. Finally, Victoria spoke. "I owe you an apology. What I said at the cafe, it was cruel and unfair. You didn't deserve that." Emma was too shocked to respond immediately. Victoria continued, her voice thick with emotion. "Sarah was my little sister. When she died, I felt like I died too. And seeing Alexander move on, seeing him happy with someone else, it felt like a betrayal, like he was forgetting her." "He'll never forget her," Emma said gently. "And I would never ask him to. Sarah will always be part of this family." Victoria looked up, tears streaming down her face. "I know that now. Catherine helped me see it, and watching you with the boys." Her voice broke. "You're good for them, good for all of them. I was just too angry to admit it." Emma moved to sit beside Victoria on the couch. "I can't imagine losing a sister. I never had one. But I understand grief. I know how it can twist you up inside, make you lash out." She took Victoria's hand. "I'm not trying to take Sarah's place. I'm just trying to find my own place in this family. And I'd like for you to be part of that if you're willing." Victoria squeezed her hand, crying harder. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." "Maybe not," Emma said with a small smile. "But I'm giving it anyway. That's what family does." They talked for over an hour, Victoria sharing stories about Sarah, Emma listening and learning about the woman who'd come before her. It hurt sometimes, hearing about how perfect Sarah had been, how much everyone had loved her. But it also helped Emma understand the legacy she was stepping into. These boys had lost their mother. This family had lost someone irreplaceable. And Emma wasn't here to replace her. She was here to help them heal. When Victoria left, she hugged Emma tight. "Thank you," she whispered, "for being big enough to forgive me, and for loving my nephews." "It's easy to love them," Emma said honestly. "They're incredible kids." That night, Emma told Alexander about Victoria's visit. He pulled her close, his arms strong around her. "You didn't have to forgive her." "I know, but holding grudges is exhausting, and life's too short." Emma looked up at him. "Besides, she's family, and family is everything." Alexander kissed her softly. "How did I get so lucky?" "I ask myself the same thing every day," Emma admitted. "Sometimes I wake up and think this is all a dream, that I'll blink and be back in my tiny apartment struggling to pay rent and wondering if I'll ever have a family." "This is real," Alexander promised, his voice fierce. "You're real. We're real. And in 3 days you're going to be my wife. Nothing's going to change that." Emma believed him. She had to. Because the alternative, that this was too good to be true, that something would go wrong, was too terrifying to contemplate. But this moment would change everything, and not in the way she expected. The wedding day dawned clear and cold, a perfect Colorado winter day. Emma woke in one of the guest rooms. Catherine had insisted on tradition, keeping the bride and groom apart the night before, and lay there for a moment, trying to process that this was really happening. Catherine knocked and came in with coffee and breakfast. "How are you feeling?" "Terrified," Emma admitted. "Excited, like I might throw up." Catherine laughed. "That's how you're supposed to feel." She sat on the edge of the bed. "Emma, I want you to know something. When Alexander first told me he was going to propose to you, I thought he was insane. I thought he was acting out of grief or gratitude or desperation." She took Emma's hand. "But I was wrong. You're perfect for him. You've brought life back to this house, laughter, hope. You've given my son a reason to smile again. And those boys, they adore you. So thank you for saying yes to our chaos." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Don't make me cry, I haven't even done my makeup yet." "Save the tears for the ceremony," Catherine said with a smile. "Trust me, you'll need them." The next few hours were a blur. Hair, makeup, getting into her dress. A simple but elegant gown that Catherine had helped her pick out. Emma barely recognized herself in the mirror. She looked like a bride, like someone's wife, like she belonged in this world. Victoria arrived with flowers, her smile genuine now. "You look beautiful." "Thank you." Emma hugged her. "And thank you for being here." "I wouldn't miss it," Victoria said. "Sarah would have wanted Alexander to be happy. I finally understand that." The ceremony was small, just family and close friends. Emma had no one to invite on her side. No parents, no siblings, no close friends. It should have made her sad, but as she stood in the doorway of the Hunt Mansion's ballroom, looking at the people gathered to celebrate, she realized she was gaining a family, a real one. The music started. Catherine kissed her cheek and went to her seat, and Emma took her first step down the aisle, her heart pounding, her eyes finding Alexander immediately. He stood at the front in a perfectly tailored suit, Jake and Tommy on either side of him in matching smaller versions. All three of them were watching her with expressions of love so pure it made her chest ache. This was her family. These three, and she was about to make it official. Emma walked down the aisle with her head high, no one to give her away because she was giving herself. Choosing this. Choosing them. When she reached Alexander, he took her hands, and she saw tears on his cheeks. "You're so beautiful," he whispered. "You're not so bad yourself," Emma whispered back, making him smile. The officiant began speaking, but Emma barely heard him. She was too focused on Alexander's face, on the way he looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. When it came time for vows, Alexander went first. "Emma Clark," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. 2 weeks ago, my sons were lost in a snowstorm. You found them. You saved them. And in doing so, you saved me too. I thought I'd never feel anything again after losing Sarah. I thought I'd spend the rest of my life going through the motions, just surviving. But you showed me what it means to really live. To hope. To love again. His voice broke. I love you. I love your kindness, your strength, your incredible capacity to forgive. I love how you make my sons laugh, how you make this house feel like a home again. I promise to take care of you, to support your dreams, to be the partner you deserve. I promise to love you with everything I am, for as long as I live. Emma was crying openly now, not caring about her makeup. Alexander Hunt, she managed through tears. I've been alone my whole life. I never knew what it felt like to belong somewhere, to be part of something bigger than myself. And then you walked into my diner and claimed me as your wife in front of everyone, and my whole world changed. She laughed through her tears. You're insane, you know that? Who proposes to someone they barely know? But I'm so grateful you did. Because you've given me everything I've ever wanted. A family, a home, a purpose. I love you. I love your boys. I love this crazy, beautiful life we're building together. And I promise to spend every day trying to be worthy of the trust you've placed in me. You're already worthy, Alexander said fiercely. More than worthy. The officiant pronounced them husband and wife, and Alexander kissed her like they were the only two people in the world. The small crowd erupted in applause. Jake and Tommy rushed forward to hug them both, creating a family group hug that made everyone cry. Emma Clark was now Emma Hunt, and despite every doubt, every fear, every moment of uncertainty, she knew she'd made the right choice. This was where she belonged. This was her family. This was her home. The reception was joyful, full of laughter and dancing and celebration. Emma danced with Alexander, then with each of the boys, then with Richard and even Victoria. She felt light, free, happier than she'd ever been in her life. But as the evening wore on, Emma noticed Alexander getting a series of phone calls. He stepped away to take them, his expression growing more and more serious. When he came back to her side, his jaw was tight. What's wrong? Emma asked immediately. Nothing, Alexander said, but she could tell he was lying. Just work stuff. Nothing to worry about on our wedding day. Emma wanted to push, but guests were approaching with congratulations, and the moment passed. But she filed it away, that flash of concern, that hint of trouble. Everything felt perfect right now. She just hoped it would stay that way. She had no idea that their happiness was about to be tested in ways neither of them could have imagined. The trouble started 3 days after the wedding. Emma woke to find Alexander's side of the bed empty and cold. She found him in his office at 4 a.m, surrounded by papers, his face haggard with stress. Alex? She used the nickname she'd started calling him, the one that made him smile. But he didn't smile now. What's going on? It's fine, he said automatically. Then, seeing her expression, he sighed. It's work. A deal I've been working on for months, it's falling apart. The investors are pulling out. If I can't fix this, the company stands to lose millions. Emma moved behind his chair, placing her hands on his shoulders. Can you fix it? I don't know. Alexander sounded defeated in a way she'd never heard before. I'm trying. But I might have to go to New York for a few days, meet with people face to face, try to salvage what I can. Then go, Emma said simply. Do what you need to do. We'll be fine here. Alexander turned to look up at her. We just got married. I don't want to leave you. I'm not going anywhere, Emma promised, and neither are those boys. We'll be here when you get back. Go save your company. So Alexander went to New York, and Emma was left alone with Jake and Tommy for the first time as their stepmother. It should have been terrifying, but instead it felt natural. She got them ready for school, made their lunches, helped with homework. They had dinner together every night, the three of them, and Emma read them stories before bed, just like Alexander did. I miss Dad, Tommy said one night, cuddled against Emma's side. Me too, Emma admitted. But he'll be home soon. He's working hard so we can have nice things. We don't need nice things, Jake said seriously. We just need him. And you. Emma's heart melted. You have us both. Always. But Alexander didn't come home in a few days. It stretched to a week, then 2. He called every night, exhausted and frustrated, telling Emma about meetings that went nowhere and investors who wouldn't budge. She could hear the strain in his voice, the fear that he was failing. You're not failing, Emma told him firmly. You're fighting. There's a difference. I miss you, Alexander said, his voice raw. I miss the boys. This is the longest I've been away from them since Sarah died. What if they forget me? They could never forget you, Emma promised. Tommy talks about you constantly. Jake leaves his drawings on your desk. They know you're coming back. But as the second week turned into the third, Emma started to worry. Alexander sounded more and more stressed, sleeping less, eating barely at all, and the boys were getting anxious. Tommy started having nightmares. Jake became withdrawn, spending hours alone in his room. Emma tried everything to keep them occupied and happy. She took them to the park, the movies, the science museum. She made elaborate meals and helped them build a fort in the living room. But nothing fully erased their sadness. They missed their father. And Emma missed her husband. She missed his laugh, his touch, the way he looked at her like she was the center of his world. She missed falling asleep in his arms and waking up to his kisses. 3 weeks had never felt so long. Then, on day 22, everything got worse. Emma was making breakfast when her phone rang. Alexander's assistant. Mrs. Hunt, I'm calling because Mr. Hunt collapsed in a meeting this morning. He's in the hospital. Emma's world tilted. What? Is he okay? The doctors say it's exhaustion and stress. He's stable, but they want to keep him overnight for observation. He asked me to call you to tell you not to worry. Not to worry. Emma almost laughed. Which hospital? She wrote down the information, her hand shaking. The moment she hung up, Catherine called. I just heard. I'm coming to stay with the boys. You need to go to him. But the boys will be fine with me for a few days. Emma, go. Alexander needs you. So Emma went. She booked the first flight to New York, her heart racing the entire way. She'd never been to New York before, had barely been on a plane. But none of that mattered. Alexander needed her. Nothing else was important. She found him in a private room at Mount Sinai Hospital, looking small and vulnerable in the hospital bed. He was awake, talking on his phone, but when he saw Emma in the doorway, he stopped mid-sentence. I'll call you back, he said hoarsely, and ended the call. Emma crossed the room and took his hand. You scared me. I'm sorry. Alexander pulled her down to sit on the edge of the bed. I didn't mean to, I pushed too hard. Tried to do too much. You should have told me how bad it was, Emma said, her voice shaking with emotion. I would have come sooner. You didn't have to do this alone. You had the boys to take care of. And you have me to take care of you. Emma's frustration bubbled over. Alex, we're married. We're supposed to be partners. That means when things get hard, we face them together. Not you carrying everything while I stay home. Alexander looked at her, really looked at her, and something in his face cracked. I'm used to handling everything alone. After Sarah died, it was just me. I couldn't fall apart because the boys needed me. I couldn't show weakness because I was running a company. I forgot I don't have to do that anymore. That you're here now. Emma climbed fully onto the bed, curling up beside him despite the IV lines and monitors. I'm here. I'm always going to be here. So from now on, you tell me when things are hard. You let me help carry the weight. Okay, Alexander whispered, pulling her close. I'm sorry for leaving, for pushing you away, for forgetting that I don't have to be strong all the time anymore. They lay there together, Emma's head on Alexander's chest, his heartbeat steady under her ear. After a while, he said quietly, the deal fell through. We're going to take a major financial hit. Not enough to bankrupt us, but enough that things are going to be tight for a while. We'll figure it out, Emma said simply. Money isn't everything. You say that now. I say it always. Emma propped herself up to look at him. Alex, I grew up with nothing, literally nothing. I know how to stretch a dollar, how to make do with less. If we need to cut back on things, we will. What matters is that we're together. All of us. Healthy and safe. Alexander stared at her like she was a miracle. How are you real? I ask myself that about you all the time, Emma said with a small smile. Now rest, doctor's orders, and tomorrow we're going home. Together. The doctors released Alexander the next day with strict orders to rest and reduce his stress. Emma took charge with the efficiency of the nurse she was training to be, making sure he ate properly, took his medications, and actually rested instead of working. They flew home together, and when they walked through the door of the mansion, the boys came running. Dad! Tommy launched himself at Alexander, who caught him despite still being weak. Jake was right behind, wrapping his arms around both of them. Emma stood back, watching her family reunite, her heart full. But that night, after the boys were asleep, Alexander sat Emma down in their bedroom. His face was serious, almost grim. Emma, I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you before, but I was afraid. Emma's stomach dropped. What? When I said the deal falling through would hurt us financially, I downplayed it. Alexander took her hands. The truth is, we're going to have to make significant changes, sell some assets, cut staff, possibly even sell this house and move somewhere smaller. Emma absorbed this. Okay. Okay. Alexander looked stunned. Emma, you don't understand. This house, the lifestyle, the money, it might all go away. You married a millionaire. You might end up with someone who's barely middle class. I didn't marry your money, Emma said firmly. I married you. You, Alex. The man who proposed to me in a diner. The father who reads to his sons every night. The husband who drove me to a secret place and opened his heart. That's who I love. Not your bank account. Alexander's eyes filled with tears. I was so scared to tell you. I thought you might leave. Never. Emma cupped his face in her hands. Listen to me. I've been poor my whole life. If we need to be poor together, I can handle that. What I can't handle is you shutting me out, trying to protect me from reality. We're partners, remember? Whatever comes, we face it together. Alexander kissed her desperately, pouring all his fear and relief and love into it. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. I don't deserve you. Yes, you do, Emma said. You deserve someone who loves you for you, not what you can give them. You deserve someone who'll stand by you in the hard times, not just the good ones. You deserve a partner. And that's what I am. Over the next few weeks, Emma proved it. When Alexander had to let go of their household staff, Emma took over the cooking and cleaning without complaint. When he started talking about selling the mansion, Emma began looking at smaller houses with genuine enthusiasm. When he worried about paying for her nursing school, Emma applied for scholarships and loans. You don't have to do this, Alexander said one night, watching her fill out financial aid forms at the kitchen table. Yes, I do, Emma said simply. This is what it means to be a family. We all contribute. We all support each other. You've been carrying us for so long, Alex. Let me help carry you for a while. The boys adapted too. When Alexander sat them down to explain that things were going to change, that they might have to move and give up some luxuries, Jake just shrugged. As long as we're together, it doesn't matter where we live. Yeah, Tommy agreed. And Emma makes really good food anyway, better than the chef did. Emma laughed through her tears. This family. These incredible people who'd chosen her, who'd made her one of them. She'd never loved them more than in that moment, facing uncertainty together. What happened next would determine their future. 2 months later, Emma stood in the kitchen of their new house, a modest 4-bedroom in a nice neighborhood, nothing like the mansion but perfect for them, when her phone rang. Alexander's number. Hey, she answered, stirring the pasta sauce on the stove. Dinner will be ready in 20 minutes. Are you on your way home? Emma. Alexander's voice was strange, tight with emotion she couldn't identify. Can you sit down? Her heart dropped. What's wrong? Are you okay? I'm fine, better than fine. Just, please sit. Emma sat at their small kitchen table, her hands trembling slightly. Okay, I'm sitting. What's going on? Richard Chen called me. Alexander's voice cracked. The investor from San Francisco, the one who pulled out of the deal that started all of this. Okay, Emma said slowly, not understanding. He read an article about us, about how we downsized, how we're making it work. Apparently, some business reporter picked up on the story. The CEO who chose family over wealth, the waitress wife who stood by him. It's been making the rounds. Alexander laughed, the sound shaky. Chen said it reminded him why he went into business in the first place, that he'd lost sight of what mattered. He wants back in, Emma. Not just him, he's bringing 3 other investors. The deal is back on, better than before. Emma's mind was spinning. What does that mean? It means we're going to be okay, more than okay. The company will not only survive, it'll thrive. His voice softened. Emma, I can't believe this. After everything, after losing it all. We didn't lose it all, Emma interrupted firmly. We had each other. That's what matters. That's what will always matter, whether this deal goes through or not. I know. Alexander's voice was thick with emotion. That's what I told Chen, that I'd already won because I had you and the boys, that the money was just a bonus. He paused. He said that's exactly why he wants to invest, because I finally have my priorities straight. Emma smiled through her tears. So, what now? Now I come home to my beautiful wife and my incredible sons, and we have dinner in our perfect little house and we celebrate. Not the money, but us. This family we've built. He paused. I love you, Emma Hunt. Thank you for saving me. In every possible way. I love you too, Emma whispered. Now come home. When Alexander walked through the door 20 minutes later, the boys tackled him immediately. Emma watched from the kitchen doorway as he hugged them, all 3 of them laughing and talking at once. Then his eyes found hers over their heads, and the look he gave her was so full of love it took her breath away. Later that night, after the boys were asleep and the dishes were done, Emma and Alexander stood on their small back porch, wrapped in each other's arms, looking at the stars. Do you want to move back to the mansion? Alexander asked quietly. We could buy it back or something even bigger, give you the life I promised. Emma thought about it. About marble floors and crystal chandeliers and rooms they never used. Then she thought about this house with its creaky stairs and small kitchen and yard just big enough for the boys to play in. She thought about cooking dinner while Tommy did homework at the table and Jake drew pictures on the fridge. She thought about the life they'd built here, scrappy and real and theirs. No, she said simply. I like it here. This feels like home. Alexander's arms tightened around her. Are you sure? You could have anything. Do anything. I have everything, Emma said, turning in his arms to face him. I have you. I have those incredible boys. I have a family. That's all I ever wanted. Everything else is just extra. I'm going to spoil you anyway, Alexander warned with a smile. Maybe not with a mansion, but with other things. Date nights, vacations, a really nice nursing school graduation present. Emma laughed. I'm graduating next month. Did you already get me something? Maybe. Alexander grinned. You'll have to wait and see. They stood there in comfortable silence, swaying slightly to music only they could hear. Emma thought about that snowy day months ago, when she'd found 2 lost boys and brought them inside. How that single act of kindness had changed everything, had given her a husband, sons, a family, a purpose. Thank you, Alexander said suddenly. For what? For saying yes. For taking a chance on us. For standing by me when everything fell apart. For showing me what really matters. He cupped her face in his hands. For being you. Emma rose on her toes and kissed him softly. I'd do it all again. Every single moment. A sound from inside made them both turn. Tommy stood in the doorway in his pajamas, his hair sleep mussed. I had a bad dream. Come here, buddy. Emma held out her arms, and Tommy ran into them. She picked him up. He was getting big, but she could still manage, and settled him on her hip. Alexander wrapped his arms around both of them. "Better?" Emma asked, kissing Tommy's forehead. "Yeah." Tommy yawned. "I dreamed you left, but you're still here." "I'm always going to be here," Emma promised. "No matter what. You're stuck with me." "Good," Tommy said sleepily. "I like being stuck with you." Jake appeared in the doorway too, rubbing his eyes. "What's everyone doing?" "Group hug," Alexander said, reaching out to pull Jake into their huddle. "Come on." So they stood there on the back porch, all four of them wrapped together, a family forged through snowstorms and proposals and financial disasters and love. So much love. "I have an idea," Emma said. "How about we all sleep in the living room tonight? Build a fort, watch a movie, camp out together?" "Yes," both boys chorused. Alexander laughed. "I guess we're having a family camp out." They moved inside, working together to build a massive blanket fort in the living room. Alexander and Jake handled the architecture while Emma and Tommy gathered pillows and snacks. Within 30 minutes, they had a cozy nest big enough for all four of them. They piled inside, the boys between Emma and Alexander, and put on a movie none of them really watched. Tommy fell asleep first, then Jake, both boys warm and safe between their parents. Emma looked at Alexander over their heads and saw her own joy reflected in his eyes. This was it. This was everything. Not the money or the mansion or the fairy tale romance. Just this, a family together choosing each other every single day. "Happy?" Alexander whispered. "So happy," Emma whispered back. "You?" "Happier than I ever thought I'd be again." Alexander reached across the sleeping boys to take her hand. "Thank you for being my miracle." "Thank you for finding me," Emma said. Outside, snow began to fall, the first snow of the season. Emma watched it through the window, remembering that storm that had brought Jake and Tommy to her door. That had started everything. She'd been so alone then, working at a diner and dreaming of someday having a family. And now here she was, surrounded by love, living a life better than any dream. The movie played on, unwatched. Emma closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of her family around her, and smiled. Whatever came next, and she knew there would be challenges, there always were, they'd face it together, as a family, as partners, as people who'd chosen each other against all odds and refused to let go. That was the real happy ending. Not the money or the mansion or the dramatic proposal. Just this quiet moment, all of them together, safe and warm and home. Emma tightened her grip on Alexander's hand, felt him squeeze back, and let herself drift toward sleep. She'd saved two boys from a snowstorm. They'd saved her right back. And Alexander had given them all a family, a second chance, a new beginning. Sometimes the best love stories didn't make sense on paper. Sometimes they were messy and fast and completely insane. But when they were right, they were worth everything. Emma Hunt fell asleep surrounded by her family, snow falling softly outside, a smile on her face and peace in her heart. She'd finally found where she belonged, and she was never letting go.